I'd like to call this meeting to order for the City of Pompano Beach Planning and Zoning Board meeting of September 27th, 2023. Would you please call the roll?
Paul Fisher.
Here.
Tundra King.
Here.
Richard Kloskowitz.
Here.
Joan Kovac.
Here.
Derek Lewis.
Here.
Darlene Smith. Here. Carla Coleman.
Here. Our illustrious chairman is not in town this week, so you guys get me. As usual, I'd like to call for a 30-second moment of silence, and then we'll get on with the agenda. Thank you. Okay, I think the next item are approval of the minutes. Does anyone have any corrections to the minutes from last meeting?
No.
Smith?
I'd like to make a motion, Chair, to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Or do we need to call the roll on this?
Yes.
Okay, then the motion's been made and seconded. I would like to point out on page 10, I have one correction. In my remarks on that item on page 10, the bottom of the page, it says cut to, and it should read cut through to. And if you'd accept that correction.
A motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Thank you.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Darlene Smith.
Yes.
Derek Lewis.
Yes.
Paul Fisher.
Yes.
Tundra King.
Yes.
Richard Kloskowitz.
Yes.
Joan Kovac.
Yes.
Carla Coleman.
Yes. Would you please place individuals testifying tonight under oath?
Anyone's going to be testifying or presenting today, please stand up and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to delay the first item of business due to a flat tire on the way up from Miami. So when those folks arrive, we'll slip them back into the agenda. So please, we'll take up item 23-18503, the right-of-way abandonment. Ms. Barszewski.
Good evening, chairpersons. For the record, my name is Maggie Barszewski. The abandonment, this is a request for an abandonment of 5 feet of right-of-way along the east side of Northeast 26th Avenue and 10 feet along the west side of Northeast 26th Avenue north of Northeast 13th Street. The reason for the request is that the width of the right-of-way within that segment of Northeast 26th Avenue is currently 70 feet, where only 50 feet is required for a typical residential street. A resident who owns one of the 8 lots located in that segment of Northeast 26th Avenue requested the abandonment, and the Development Services Department determined that the entire strip could be abandoned as long as the property owners concurred. The original subdivision, Avalon Gardens Estates, first edition, was platted in 1957 and simply extended the width of the Northeast 26th Street, aka Hidden Harbor Drive, even though that segment of the right-of-way was not providing landscape median that the south of Northeast 13th Street does. The original request included the right-of-way in front of 8 of the houses along the segment. However, after conducting a door-to-door survey of the residents, 2 of the property owners along the segment chose to not be included in receiving the additional property. There were no objections to the abandonment as then it became. from the service providers, just that the request, they requested that an easement be retained, which will be done through a clause in the abandoning ordinance. The review standards for an abandonment are: the easement is not now or in the foreseeable future of any benefit to the city or its inhabitants. And number 2, the abandonment is consistent with the comprehensive plan. With the provision of an easement to accommodate possible utility access, there is no public purpose to the excess right-of-way. Therefore, staff has determined that the above review standards have been met. Staff provides the following alternative motions for the board's review. Alternative 1 would be recommend approval to the City Commission as the board finds the easement abandonment meets the required standards, with the following one condition: that a utility easement be retained over the entire area of the abandoned area. Alternative number 2 is that you could table the abandonment request to allow time for the applicant to address issues that the board may raise. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions for staff? Okay. Well, there's no real applicant because the city is the applicant, but I'd like to open the public hearing at this time. Would anyone like to speak on this item? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing. Any additional questions you've thought of for staff? Well, I'm ready to take a motion on this item.
I have a motion. I'd like to move that the board find that there's competent substantial evidence that's been presented for P&Z number 23180000003 that satisfies the review criteria, and move approval of the item subject to the one condition requested by staff.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded. Will you please call the roll?
Did Ms. Tundra second it?
I did.
Derek Lewis?
Yes.
Tundra King?
Yes.
Paul Fisher?
Yes.
Richard Kloskowitz?
Yes.
Joan Kovac?
Yes.
Darlene Smith?
Yes.
Carla Coleman?
Yes. Thank you. Next item is Covenant Garden Flex application, item 2105000013. Ms. Barshevsky, you won this item again, too.
Yes. Okay. So this is a request by Keith Incorporated on behalf of ICG CGP 58 LLC for a maximum of 40 units for a multifamily community on the approximate 2.67 acre site. The subject property includes 2 separate parcels on a property that is currently vacant. The land use designations of the 2 parcels is commercial. The subject properties are zoned B3. The proposed project consists of 10 two-story garden apartment buildings. The applicant is requesting the flex allocation to allow the total of number of residential units for the project, which is 40, to be developed on a property with land use designated as commercial, and that's why the flex is necessary. Per section 154.61 F3B, no deed restriction affordable housing is required for this request, since the site is within close proximity to existing income restricted housing. The surrounding properties include the following. To the north is, the land use is low residential, and the zoning is commercial slash, and also RS3 and also and the zoning is RS3 and B3. The actual use there to the north is vacant, single family, and duplexes. To the east is, the land use is commercial and the zoning is RS3. There is a church that is located on that parcel. To the south is commercial land use with RS3 3. No, it's I apologize, it's B3, Retail Plaza. And then to the west is commercial, RS3 and B2. So, and then the use on that property is, well, it's Northwest 27th Avenue, and then there are duplexes and vacant property. Per the requirements of the code, the applicant has submitted a conceptual site plan. Section 154.61D of the code requires that the following review standards. An applicant shall only be approved on the finding that there is competent substantial evidence in the record that all of the following standards are met, and that is 1, consistent with the applicable goals, objectives, and policies of the city's comprehensive plan and this chapter, and the use of the reserve and flex units will produce a reasonable development pattern. The staff report states, for the record, the listed goals, objectives, and policies, and the applicant is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The proposed density is approximately 15 dwelling units, which is less than the 46 dwelling units allowed by B3 zoning, with an allocation of flex units. The flex residential is a good transition between the commercial to the south and the surrounding residential to the north and west. And it is staff's opinion that the addition of residential in the manner proposed by the conceptual plan would produce a reasonable development pattern in considering compatibility to adjacent uses and the suitability of the parcel for various development patterns. Therefore, staff confirms that the criteria of section 154.61D review standards have been met. The existing recertification flex table reflects that the city has 340 flexible units available. With this application, of course, it would bring it down to 300 flexible units available. Staff makes the following recommended motions. Recommend approval of the flex allocation request subject to the following condition. 1, the final site plan approved for the project shall be substantially conforming to the submitted conceptual plan with any amendments needed to comply with the zoning code and other relevant city codes. And 2, if a building permit is not issued within 2 years from the resolution's approval date, the applicant must request an extension, or the approval of the flex allocation will be null and void. And then alternative motion number 2 would just to be table it in case you have any other questions that need to be addressed. And that concludes my presentation. If you'd like to ask any questions, I'd be happy.
Any questions from the board for staff at this time?
I have
Smith.
one question, not about this particular one, but do we have any flex units that are about to come back into the coffers? I know that there's some projects that were kind of on the cusp, but they've been renewed.
I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying.
Sorry.
Jean Dolan, Development Services. Most flex units are just renewed because every time there's an emergency order, you can get an extension on your development orders relatively easily. So because we
Okay.
keep having hurricanes and emergency orders, that they keep getting extensions. So we haven't had any units returned
Okay.
recently, or we don't really expect it.
Thank you. Just curious about that. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions from the board?
Just a quick one.
Okay.
'Cause
Mr.
it looks
Lewis?
thank you. It looks like there's going to be a lot more cars in this area. And do we know if in conjunction with doing this, we've taken a look at any of the traffic patterns or how they're going to be affected? 'Cause it's just close to Atlantic is why I'm asking, and there's a bus stop right there.
Well, first of all, this actually would be a reduction since it's residential and it's flexing out the commercial. So I think traffic is not really a consideration regarding this request.
Is the applicant here tonight? Will he or she be making a presentation? Okay. I'll save my question for him. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Mike Amodio with Keith on behalf of the applicant, and thank you for having me here tonight. I do have a short presentation to help out with any questions. Otherwise, the applicant doesn't have any issues with staff's 2 conditions listed in the report.
Thank you.
You want me to go ahead and
Please.
Maggie, is there a way to
It's a PDF.
All right, sorry about that. So my name is Mike Amodio with Keith, here on behalf of the applicant. We're requesting 40 residential flex units for a proposed multifamily development named Covent Gardens Apartments, located at 90 Northwest 27th Avenue, just west of Powerline Road and north of West Atlantic Boulevard. As Maggie said, it's currently Zone B3 with a commercial land use, which is why we are seeking the residential flex allocation. Covent Gardens is a 40-unit proposed multifamily development. The site plan will consist of 10 buildings, 10 two-story buildings with 40 market rate rental apartments. Each building will vary in 3 to 5 units each with 2-bedroom units. The applicant has a concurrent major site plan application in the DRC process now and has held its neighborhood meeting with the Collier City Civic Association as of May 31st, 2023. Like I said, the applicant has no issues with the 2 conditions proposed by staff in the staff report.
Are there any questions of the applicant from the board members? Well, I have a couple. Sir, could you go back to the site plan a minute? I don't see any place on your site plan for any kind of amenities at all, including anything, a dog park, a tot park, anything like that, because the green space in the middle seems to be a dry retention area. So are you proposing to build 40 townhomes with no real amenity green space?
I think that's best going to be addressed at the site plan level. Maggie,
I know this is just flex, but we're kind of tied to this site plan with 40 flex. Are we not, council?
Yes, because a part of the conditions include that it'll be similar to this conceptual plan.
So in other words, if we approve this tonight with this site plan with no amenities or such, if this substantially changes, you have to come back to us to ask for the flex again.
said.
Well, I have some concerns. I know we're not at site plan, but I have some concerns about approving a project of this size with 40 families and no amenities.
Not a place for a kid to throw a ball or anything. Yeah, I agree with that, because you'll be attracting families.
It's a beautiful project, but it's like you're not quite there yet.
Right, right. And I believe this plan is conceptual. I don't know if it's been modified during site plan approval. And, you know, the development team may be able to look at some alternatives to that retention area to propose amenities.
I'm not sure what you can build on a retention area, but that's not why we're here tonight. But if we approve this tonight, and then don't like your site plan when you come back to us for site plan. Council, can you explain to the board where we would be at that point?
Well, I was looking at staff because it's really the condition that's driving it. I'm not sure if the condition is required at this point.
Well, basically, this is supposed to be conceptual, so we look at whether or not it's substantially compliant with the conceptual that is provided. Now, if at the time that they come in for the site plan, they hear your warning and decide, okay, instead of having the rear of each of the townhouses to be paved, maybe it's grass or something like that, or maybe there is some sort of amenity in the dry retention area, then, that's basically conceptually the same, because we generally look at where are the structures, where is the open space, and it would all generally be the same if that is the case. So you may want to just sort of rethink or see what you're going to be.
Well, let me ask the council one other question. If they come back to us and we don't like the site plan, we are not tied to the 40 units, are we? To approving the 40 units?
The flex application, I don't see that being revisited because of the site plan. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, yes, I am suggesting that if we approve 40 units with no amenities of any kind, are we trapped with this site plan, is what I'm asking.
I think that the condition that staff has indicated is one that would be as similar to this as it says, with any amendments needed to comply with the zoning code and any relevant city codes. I'm assuming that means that if there are any particular city codes or zoning code that would require, which I'm not aware of, that would require those amenities, then those amendments would be possible. Again, I'm only looking at what's been provided by staff as regards to its condition. But the flex in and of itself is not tied to, I'm aware of, it's not tied to a site plan.
It is.
So it's not tied to the number of units. So what if what Madam Chair is saying is correct, and that maybe we, instead of you having 40 units, maybe you bring it down to 38 units to then include a park or a playground or something of that nature. So maybe I'm stuck on the number 40. So we'll be able to then make the adjustment if we decide to make said changes to add some play area.
I'd like to address that. Basically, they already have the entitlement for quite a bit more than the 40 units. So given the fact that this is zoned for B2, sure.
So whenever we do a flex resolution, it says up to 40 units. So if they can't actually fit it when they get to their final site plan, we take those, any they can't fit back when they get their final COs and put those back in the pool. So if they can only actually build 38 once they add some amenity areas or whatever, we won't just leave those two stuck in Neverland. We'll take them back.
There's lots of ways to configure 40 units. They have chosen to configure them in 10 beautiful 10 two-story townhomes. I'm just concerned that with that, it's not enough amenities to make it a livable community. That's my only concern. I have no problem personally voting yes on the flex units tonight, as long as they kind of take under consideration any concerns they might hear from this board, and if they choose to act on them, fine. If they don't, we'll deal with it at site plan, I think is kind of where I'm coming from. Okay, thank you. Thank you both, staff and council. Okay, Do you have anything else to say in your presentation before I open it to public hearing?
Oh, that's it. It concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'd like to open this item to a public hearing. Is anyone in the audience wish to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Does the applicant have any additional comments you'd like to make?
I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Does the board have any additional questions or discussion?
Did I hear someone said that they met with the community? I think I heard,
Yes, yes. The applicant has met with the Collier City Civic Association back in May.
and do you know how many people were present?
I do not know.
I'd be interested to know that because I do understand Ms. Carla's concern with the lack of areas to have somewhere safe to place. That's an area where we've had a few homicides recently, and I would really be concerned that the kids could just play at, at your site, that they could have somewhere they could go. They wouldn't have to walk down to the park. So those would be things that would definitely be a concern of mine, and I would like to know how many people attended that meeting so that we can really be fair to the community to see, yes, we're building this place, but it doesn't have a play area. So sometimes when we say we met with someone at some of these meetings, there are little to no people that may come out. And I'm not saying that's your case, so I'll be interested to know how many people attended the meeting, if that's something we can look at in the future. Thank you, sir.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Would someone like to make a motion on this item?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the board finds that competent substantial evidence has been presented supporting the flex for LN214 for the Covent Gardens that satisfies the review standards, and that the board recommends approval for the request for the city with the following 2 conditions by staff.
Second,
Chair, I'll second that.
please call the roll.
Tundra King,
Yes.
Darlene Smith,
Yes.
Paul Fisher,
Yes.
Richard Kloskowitz,
Yes.
Joan Kovac, Derek Lewis,
Yes.
Carla Coleman.
Yes. We look forward to seeing you back with a site plan.
Very much.
Thank you. I am seeing that our first item folks are now here, so we're going to revert back to the first item of the agenda, the Amica plat. Item 20-14000016. Ms. Barshevsky, we have your last item of the night.
Yes. Okay. So,
Has everyone been sworn in who's going to deal with this item?
you need to be sworn in if you're going to speak.
You need to be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So this proposed plat is for a .54 acre undeveloped property located on the northwest corner of Powerline Road and Northwest 4th Street. The agent is Odalis Bello of Bello and Bello Land Surveying Corporation. They are representing the property owner, who is Cochiola LLC. The subject property consists of 3 vacant parcels. The property will be platted as one parcel labeled Parcel A. However, there is a Tract A that includes a 10-foot wide right-of-way dedication for North Powerline Road. The plat restricts the property to 9,200 square feet of commercial, where the intent is to build a retail hardware store on the site. The project is accessed from Northwest 4th Street. A conceptual site plan has been provided along with this plat submittal that is the same as the site plan that was approved by this board on February 24th, 2021. The site plan includes a Type B landscape buffer required in Section 155.5203 F3 of the code. The land use designation of the parcel is split with .48 acres of subject property designated as residential low and the balance designated as commercial. A non-residential flex allocation request was approved on March 23rd, 2021, which will allow commercial use on the residentially designated land use portion. The zoning for the subject property is B2, commercial business. This plat was reviewed at the DRC meeting of October 20th, 2021, and found to be in compliance with the city's land development regulations. All comments from the DRC meeting have been addressed. The plat reflects all county development review report recommendations, and the review standards for a plat found in Article 5, Part 7 of the code have been met. Therefore, staff recommends approval of this plat with 2 conditions that must be completed prior to the placement on the city commission. And the 2 conditions include, number 1, the plat cover page must be signed and sealed by the surveyor and signed by all owners. And the applicant must submit a title opinion less than 6 months old and must be addressed to the city. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions I could answer, or the applicant is here.
Any questions from the board? For Maggie?
I was just wondering why the delay from 2 years ago.
Apparently COVID.
Okay.
Okay. Then let's hear from the applicant. Thank you.
Just your name and address for the record, please.
Odalis Bello, Bello and Bello Land Surveying, 12230 Southwest 131 Avenue, Miami, Florida, 33186.
Thank you.
So you just want to make sure you don't have a presentation, but you want to have any questions answer any questions the board might have.
Absolutely right.
This is a simple plat request at this point. Any questions from the board? I just want to note that I went back and looked at the site plan that you submitted last time. And I know that you will work with staff on that as you move through the process after the plat is approved tonight. I just want to point out to you that there may have been some changes in requirements on that site plan since the last time and what we have under now, especially the buffering along the residential neighborhoods. So we look forward to seeing your site plan for this. I understand it's a hardware store?
Yes.
It's a hardware store. It was noted on the old site plan as a home and building supply center. Those are kind of 2 different things.
Yes. It's one of those Imeka stores.
Okay.
They sell building supplies.
So it's not a hardware store, it's a building supply store.
Yes. I think it's a mix, no? Hardware store.
Well, those 2 are pretty different in intensity. So this is plat tonight. You'll work that out with staff. But we've gotten a number of, we've gotten very sensitive about what we approve abutting residential. So there's a big difference between a building supply company center and a hardware store.
Maybe I'm mistaken about the future use. I'm sure.
And what's allowed, I believe, in B2. So as you work through the process, we're here tonight on plat, which we're happy to give you, but we'll be looking to see what you come back to us with. If you don't have anything else tonight, I need to open the public hearing to see if there's anybody from the audience who wants to speak on this item. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any other questions anyone might have for the applicant? No. Thank you. We need a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion. As the applicant has provided ample evidence that they meet the requirements for plat approval, I move that we approve the plat.
Second.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Would you please call the roll?
Joan Kovac,
Yes.
Tundra King,
Yes.
Paul Fisher,
Yes.
Richard Kloskowitz,
Yes.
Derek Lewis,
Yes.
Darlene Smith,
Yes.
Carla Coleman.
Yes. Thank you. And may your trip back be much easier than your trip up.
We even had a flat tire on the road. Let me tell you, that roadside assistance, the turnpike, it works perfect. I hope you don't need it. I recommend it.
Oh, what a day.
Such a mess.
Well, it's only 6:30 and we're at our last item of the evening. This, we'll hear from Ms. Gratzner. I'm not pronouncing that right.
That's okay. Gratzer.
Gratzer. I put an N in it, sorry. Gratzer on item 22-124028.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Coleman and board members. My name is Lauren Gratzer. I'm a planner here with Development Services. Today, we'll be discussing a major site plan for a new residential development. Here's the general location of the property. It's located north of MLK Boulevard on the west side of North Andrews Avenue. Here's an aerial of the property. It's located just north of Markham Elementary and a little bit of industrial to the north. The proposed use is 3 two-story residential buildings with a total of 23 units, a parking lot, a tot lot, and a dog park. The lot coverage is 19%. The height of the buildings will be about 24 feet high. This project was reviewed by the DRC 3 times, March, May, and August of 2023. This project has not been reviewed by the Architectural Appearance Committee as of yet. They will attend that board after this one. The zoning district is RM12, which is multifamily residential, and the land use is low to medium. Should the board find that the application has provided competent substantial evidence to satisfy the review standards for major site plan approval, the Development Services Department recommends the following conditions. Number 1 is the applicant shall submit a 30-foot dedication for, I think that's supposed to be 3 feet dedication, for Northwest 15th Court prior to building permit approval. Number 2, provide a copy of the proposed 14-foot easement. Oh, it is 30 foot, sorry, wrong project in my head. The 30-foot dedication is going to be for the right-of-way that is required in that area. So going back, number 2, provide a copy of the proposed 14-foot easement prior to recordation and building permit approval for the city attorney's review. Number 3, provide evidence of compliance with the applicant's proposed sustainability points. Number 4 is a set of standard conditions of approval. 1 is to include unity of title for all of the folios of the project. 2, provide a copy of the recorded plat. 3, provide a final SCAD letter from the Broward County. 4, an easement agreement form shall be submitted at time of building permit. 5, plans are subject to compliance with all applicable code requirements, including but not limited to the DRC comments for the site plan. And finally, 6, a copy of the subtype plan approved by the Broward Sheriff's Office must be submitted for the zoning compliance permit approval. This concludes my presentation. I am here to answer any questions, and the applicant is here as well.
Questions from staff? I mean, from the board, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just had a question.
Lewis?
There's sort of that triangular area that's just outside. Is there anything that's going to be done with that or changed or?
So the triangle area is actually right of way, so that's not going to be affected with this project.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you. Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Good evening, Madam Chair, Board, City staff. My name is Tara Patton. I'm the agent for the owners, and I'm happy to make a presentation if you so
Let me
choose.
just ask, were you sworn in earlier?
I need to be sworn in. Thank you, Chairman.
Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And just your name again and your address for the record.
My name is Tara Patton, 10805 Glen Eagles Road in Boynton Beach, Florida, 33436.
Thank you.
Is it the board's desire for me to go ahead and proceed?
Please.
Okay, very good. Well, first, I want to thank you for having us this evening, and also to thank staff because we've been going through this process for about a year, and really appreciate Lauren and Jean's patience with us. This is a small project. I've worked on some bigger projects and some medium-sized projects. This smaller project brings a lot of headaches and challenges just because of the small size and the number of units one needs to yield, and trying to get all the good things that you all spoke about earlier, which is the amenities, into a parcel like this. So this project has a funny name. I think it might relate to one of the owner's wives or pets. I'm not sure. But the project is called Gigi's. And as Lauren indicated, this project is located on Andrews Avenue. I've put up an aerial here for you. And the southern portion of the site is northwest of 15th Court. We're slightly, the parcel goes slightly north of Northwest 15th Avenue, which again you might be familiar with, but it is part of this Andrews Avenue extension project, and one of your board members, I think, had asked about the triangular piece. That is sort of additional right-of-way that the DOT had when they widened Andrews Avenue about 5 years ago, so that's kind of remnant right-of-way. And we did request from Broward County if they would be interested in selling it to us so that we would have a more comprehensive parcel, but they declined and said that they needed it for possible retention, drainage for Andrews Avenue. However, we are landscaping it per the request of city staff, so it won't just look like a remnant piece of right-of-way. So anyway, this is the location of the parcel. Attached is here the land use and zoning. It's a very colorful map, but I tried to, we have a cursor here. I tried to place it here in black. The land use is low LM, low medium, and the zoning here is RM12. So you can tell that we are surrounded by, particularly from a land use and zoning standpoint, we are surrounded by a lot of industrial, mostly industrial parks there. And then we're here kind of in this pocket of Pompano that I think hasn't really been developed upon. You will see, or maybe have seen on the aerial, that we are adjacent to some single-family homes that have been there for probably 40 years or so. So this is something new coming into this neighborhood. And so when we started this project, we tried it to be very sensitive to the single family that's there, but also recognizing that we're kind of in this pocket that has this RM12 and low-medium designation surrounded by this industrial area. So I wanted to just first take you through the site plan. This is on the right, you'll see it's sort of an aerial overview of what the site looks like. So I tried to orientate the site plan. You may have received the document in a more landscape fashion. I just tried to orient it more north and south. So when you come in off of Andrews Avenue, if you're coming southbound here, you can make a right into Northwest 15th Court, and the 30-foot right-of-way that Lauren talked about, I will go into in a moment to explain what's going on there. But you would make a right in, and this will also be an ingress and egress out as well. So you would make a right in coming into the development. We do not propose to gate it at this time. We will be having a perimeter wall on the western side and a perimeter decorative fence screened with landscaping. The wall will also have screening on the west side, but you'll come into the development and you'll see that we have 8 units here It's a total of 23 units, so an 8-unit series, a 7-unit series, and another 8-unit series of buildings. These are 2-story buildings. They will consist of approximately 1,400 square feet each, and each unit contains 3 bedrooms. So here we have some surface parking, and then we have some amenities. We had ideally would have loved to put a swimming pool or some other swim amenities, but unfortunately, with the parameters you need for a pool and whatnot, we couldn't quite make that happen. But what staff really helped push us towards is to give some more passive amenities, and we've created, here a tot lot here, and then a dog park here. And both of these will have ample shade. So in other words, we have, when you look at the contemporary nature of the buildings, we've got some shade shelters, if you will, that sort of match the architecture of the site. So you're not just placed into a recreation area without ample shade. It will have benches and so forth in both. There's a pedestrian pathway along this perimeter here of the site, and then residents will be able to egress through this area here onto this sort of local road here and make a right turn out if necessary. So this is not an ability to come into the site. This is only the ability. Did I say that right? Yes. Okay. I can have a hard time seeing without my glasses. So I wanted to explain a little bit about this 30-foot right-of-way that you heard of. Because again, I mentioned that this site has really not, or this area of Pompano really hasn't been developed in any recent years. So this 15th Court right-of-way really doesn't exist on paper. I think it exists via easements at this point. So you can see through the aerial that it's not even paved. So when one comes in to develop, and you all know the term concurrency, development needs to make sure that we do the right thing and compensate for what's not there. So this 30-foot right-of-way is actually a requirement of the city. It exists today as an easement. So I think staff recognized early on that this area needing some roadways, some papered roadways, if you will, the city looked at their code and made a change. So most local roads are 50 feet. And in this particular section of Pompano, the staff made a determination, and this is concurrent when we came in. I don't know if we were necessarily the impetus. I think they recognized that there is attention being made to this area, so it was something that staff did independent of our request. But they amended the code to state that local roadways in this area are 30 feet instead of 50. So again, how this road exists today, the way this deed reads, because this property is unplatted, the deed says that there's a 30-foot easement that allows for ingress and egress. So I think that's how people have been moving in and out of the property to date. So this, again, the staff has amended the city code to state that the dedication for right-of-way in this area is 30 feet. And what we have done is when we came to you with the plat in April, we have dedicated that 30 feet. Broward County is on board with that. We got the plat approved last week, as a matter of fact. So that 30 feet will be dedicated as part of the plat to the public. But our civil engineer, very fastidious, said, you know, the 30 feet right-of-way is great, but we feel like we need to be able to have more space for our infrastructure and for drainage. So what we've proposed is that on our property, we are going to dedicate the 30 feet, which will no longer be ours, but we will also dedicate an easement for 14 feet for the purposes of having more space for infrastructure. Because obviously if city streets are 50, we're coming down to 30. And I think the staff's intent for that was because most property owners there can't necessarily give that amount of right-of-way, so that's why the 30 was determined. So we're going to be giving a 44-foot area, if you will. 30 of it will be dedicated right-of-way, and 14 feet will be an easement that we will still own, but it will contain additional infrastructure within that area. So that was sort of a challenge that we had early on to figure out how much space we needed. The city had to go through their process in terms of determine how much right-of-way was in fact necessary. And of course, you know, when you start tinkering with density and acreage, it impacts the number of units that you can do. So ultimately, given the dedication requirement here, we're at 23 units. So I wanted to point out, I've mentioned my woes me. We've had some challenges just because when you have a small site, you want to pack as much as you can in there. Given that, the site started out as 2.05 acres. Between the right-of-way dedication, we're down to 1.93, so that allows for 12 units per acre per the zoning, which gives us the 23 units. So we're not asking for any flex, we're not asking for any additional units other than what we are allowed to by right. The next thing was our maximum allowable lot coverage is 60%. We have a lot coverage of 19%. So I thought we did a pretty good job in keeping ample space. Minimum 25% open space, we provided 41%. Again, that's in keeping with, and again, that's with the impetus and help of staff with helping us create these pocket amenities versus additional parking. Because that is one thing, well, I'll pause here for a moment, that is one thing the developer thought was very much an amenity, was to have ample parking, given that these units are each 3-bedroom. And we were up to upwards about 75 parking spaces, and staff said, well, you know, that's great, but we'd really like to see, and again, sort of mirroring your concerns with the project before, is that we want to see some on-site amenities. We feel like the residents need that. And while our original intent and thought was, well, parking is great, no one will ever have to worry, no one will ever have to call the city to bother anyone that there's a parking issue, the staff was right on, and we were happy to incorporate those into the site plan. So our setbacks are very well met. So on the north, which is the rear, is 25 feet, that we have provided 33. Our southern setback is 25, and we have provided 25. Our east setback side is 8 feet. We provided the 26.94, and on the west side again is 8 feet, and we provided the 78, and that's just because we had the additional area there. The parking required, again, sort of going back to that issue, we are only required to have 46 spaces, so we were still able to get in some of the extra parking that we wanted. So when you do 3 bedrooms, you know, times 1 car per bedroom, that's about 69 parking spaces. So we're pretty close to that. So we feel very comfortable that we've given the project ample parking, and that residents won't have a problem, hence won't call the city, and will hopefully enjoy their quality of life there. So the purpose of this was, again, to just demonstrate to you that with the help of staff, we were able to meet or exceed our code requirements. So here's the elevations. Our architect had sort of selected something very contemporary, clean, not too much gingerbread is kind of what I call it, sort of going away from the Mediterranean style, which is kind of what I grew up with here in South Florida. So these elevations are very crisp, they're very straight, and we, again, had to work a lot with staff because they really help push us to meet and exceed some of the code requirements. So I'll just sort of go over them, and then I'll cycle through the elevations. In section 155-5601, it talks about multi-family development and the code and design standards. So the ones I wanted to focus on are the building facade requirements, because we've met all the others requiring the building size, the building facades, the roofs, materials, and so forth. But the two I kind of wanted to speak upon is the building facade section of this code. And the code talks about how we have to provide a minimum of 3 of the following design features for residential units. And one of the things that the code does also talk about is that they like for multifamily developments to face the road. And that was sort of a challenge for us because we really didn't feel that we wanted residents oriented, at least their front oriented towards Andrews Avenue, now that it's, a widened roadway. And we didn't want to see all that surface parking next to Andrews. So staff was great to work with us and to allow us to put our back to Andrews. So the front of the facade, the front of the buildings where the residents access is internal. However, staff was not easy on us in terms of making the rears, while I say turn our back, we needed to up our game and make the facades facing Andrews Avenue much more in kin with what a front elevation would look like. So the code talks about achieving 3 design features, and we have, I think, accomplished 6 of the 8, and again, you're only required to have 3. So we made sure we had recessed entrances, covered porches, pylars, columns next to the doorways. We have a bay window on the ends of the building. We have eaves projecting at least 6 feet from this facade, and on the southern elevation, we incorporated a planter and a bay window. So those are just some of the elements that, again, staff helped us and pushed us to in making the project better. We also, on the rear elevation, typically you'll see, and again, I say the rear is facing Andrews Avenue to make it appear more like a front elevation in nature. We changed the sliders, which you see typically, to French doors. And I think that helped give it appearance and also created a little overhang over those entrances.
Do you have a picture you could show us?
Oh,
of
yes,
that?
I was going to cycle.
Okay.
I'm
Right.
not busy talking. So these are the front elevations. And so this is looking to the north. This shows you the tot lot area. And this is just another one showing you the dog park. Looking south here. Bicycle parking, we only were required to have 7 bicycle parking spaces, and we made it 20. So here is that elevation that I was speaking of, the rear elevation. So those doors are now sliders, from sliders to French doors, and we also have the covering, the porch covering over each of those. And then this slide really doesn't do it justice, but we do have more foundation plantings against the rear elevation, in addition to this perimeter buffer that I spoke about earlier. So I just wanted to conclude and touch upon the landscape buffers. So we are a type C buffer on the western side. So here on the western side where we're adjacent to that single family residential, we have a type C buffer. And so that type C buffer requires a tree, a wall, a hedge, and then another tree. So on the side facing the single family residential units, we have that tree, the hedge, then a 6-foot wall, and then a tree on our side. So we feel like that is a good buffer, if you will, that helps separate us. Our buildings are not tall, so they're not going to be monstrous adjacent to the adjacent single family. I think they'll find it very in kin. It is only 23 units. And, having the separation in between buildings. They won't be looking at a massive linear string of buildings. So that is our western buffer. The other buffer along Andrews Avenue, that is a 5-foot decorative fence, as I mentioned earlier, with some collusia being installed, 5-foot collusia shrubs. So fencing won't even be seen by any passersby because it will be screened by the bushy collusia vegetation. So in summary, I hope that you're as proud of the project as we have been in terms of where we started. Staff took us to 3 DRCs, and I think they've helped us make a better project. So we're hoping that you find the project in compliance and seek approval with us.
Any questions for the applicant?
I have one. I just want to compliment this applicant. You not only met our code, you exceeded it, and with only 23 units, you've you're going to give your people some amenities with the tot park and the dog park. I think it's going to be a very nice project, and I just wanted to compliment you on it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
I may have missed it, but are you okay with the 4 conditions proposed by staff?
Yes, sir, we are.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Ms. King?
I had a question. I like your project. I just had a question. Will there be a HOA?
Well, it's rental. So
Oh, it's all rental. Okay, I'm
so
sorry. I
the good
missed that
news,
part.
yes, no HOA dues.
Oh, perfect. The garbage pickup. I saw something in the far right corner. Is that where the garbage pickup will be?
It's funny you say that. That's probably the only first gold star we got was on the 2 dumpsters and the location that we put them. So when we worked with Beth Dubois, she was very happy with us. So as you can tell, I'm a high achiever and like staff's approval. So with the 2 dumpsters, yes, on the western side.
Okay,
Are
I
what
just
we
want to make sure
provided.
that was what I saw. So the garbage truck will just use the one entrance. I know you said the one exit only goes what, to the south when the exit?
Yes.
So the garbage truck will have enough room to come in, and how will they go out?
They will,
Because the one way you said they can only come in, right? They can't exit. So they have enough room to,
yes, they can come in, it's like, and they're on an angle, these dumpsters here, so it will make it easy for them to access, because they're front-loaded.
okay. I see what you're saying. Thank you. That answers my question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any from this end of the table?
I have a question of the staff at this point. I wanted to find out of that 30-foot roadway amendment, was that something that came before the board for changing it from 50 to 30 feet?
Yeah, we actually did that a couple of years ago. I don't know if you'll recall it, but that was chapter 100, so it doesn't actually come in front of the Planning and Zoning Board. That's the engineering chapter. So that establishes what our standard right-of-way widths are, and we created a separate code section for the neighborhood north of Markham and also just west of the mosque there on 15th Street, because those have some random houses in them that were built, but the roads were never dedicated, so there's no way to get utilities there, there's no way to get legal access to those lots, so those lots can't be developed until we get real roads. So right now, we're in the process of, and James is smiling because we're struggling with the title opinions on all these rights-of-way, just trying to get the 30 feet, because we had to look at what is the minimum we could take to make this neighborhood work and developable, because the 50 feet just pretty much destroyed there was nothing left of you couldn't develop anything if we took the full 50. So we're in the process of doing that. So that's the reason it didn't come to you, because it goes through chapter 100.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions from the board? Well, I've got a couple, so if you think of more, let me know. Lauren, why was this project before us, before AAC?
So we always encourage applicants to go to the Architectural Appearance Committee first, just to make sure that they have the design laid out. But the applicant does have the option to come here at their own risk. So if you guys make any conditions that would affect something on them, then they could potentially have to come back here. And then vice versa, if they go to the Architectural Appearance Committee and they make conditions that would affect the site layout, then they'll have to come back to you after. So it's just
Okay.
at their own risk.
I understand that you kind of describe these buildings as crisp. I would kind of describe them as stark, very stark. And if I were sitting on the AAC, I might have some issues with that. Not so much the layout or the covers, but just how stark they are with a monotone paint scheme and the like. And that's one of the reasons why I'm really kind of surprised you're here first, because, I know that this is a hard piece of property to work with, and I think you've done a great job working with staff on the dog park and the tot lot, because that's an issue. I'm not so sure about some of your landscaping, and can staff tell me that 5-foot fence in the backyard and no trees back there, that meets code?
Which fence? The one on,
Andrew's side.
there should be trees on that side as well.
Well, if I look at the pictures, I have to admit, I'm not Fred, who looks at every single tree in the landscape plan, but those backyards looked terribly stark with the 5-foot pins.
We have the landscape architect here. He can help address that.
Okay, great. Have you been sworn in?
Yes, I was.
Thank you.
Good evening. Bill Eager, my office at 14121 Southwest 108th Street, Miami. We do have trees back there. The renderings don't necessarily reflect what the trees are, but the plans do have satin leaf trees that are right at the back of the houses. On the Andrews portion, where the Clusha hedge is going, there are yellow tababuyas going in there as well.
How tall? And I apologize for not thoroughly looking at the landscape plan to get the heights before I came.
So the, sorry. Okay, so the tababuyas on the street are 12 feet high, and the satin leaves are 14 that are up against the building.
Okay. Well, I warn you, if Fred were here, he'd want taller trees. But if they meet code and then the city landscape guru has signed off on them, that's fine.
He gave us a bunch of comments, and we've addressed all of those.
Okay, all right. But I will tell you, the buildings are just so stark. But you will be going to AAC.
Yes, I'll be going to AAC. I've done it both ways here at the city, and I always prefer to go to you first.
Well, we would prefer that you go to AAC first in the future.
I've noted.
Okay.
That is noted. Please note that the buildings are of 3 different colors, so there's different color schemes, so they're not all the same.
Again, I could not tell that from what we looked at. So you may want to address that in a little different way when you looked at it. Because, you know, with that modern architecture, which I know is all the rage in certain places now, but personally, I don't believe it's going to last very long as far as is something that we all like down here. It's just not friendly enough. But again, that's my personal opinion. You're here tonight on a site plan, and we appreciate all of the work that you've done with the city thus far. Thank you. I need to open a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak on this item?
I have one additional question for the applicant, if there's no one from the
No.
audience.
And I'll close the public hearing, and you can go back to questions for the applicant.
I frequent that area often, and the lighting is subpar in some of the areas. So will there be any changes on the exterior? I know when you get to the stop sign down there, Andrews, it's extremely dark, and all of that is where you're going to be going to enter your property. And at night, since a lot of the area is industrial, it's dark because everything's closed. So is there, I mean, you're going to have families there, so I would really be concerned about the lighting in that area.
Absolutely, and the Sheriff's Department, Patrick Noble, helped us early on with that. So we do have a photometric plan that was included as part of the project, and that we're meeting, we're putting the lights, the pole lights, as well as lights on the building for that very reason, for safety.
And I know this is probably a little bit down the line, but just FYI, there has been some talk about possibly Markham being closed, and that would be a school that would be right there for, you know, your residents who thinking their kids can, oh, my kids can just go across the street. So I'm hoping that that's not the case, but there has been a lot of talk about it from the school board's perspective, and so I hope that we don't mislead people to think, oh, my kid can just walk 2 feet and they're at school. There may be some adjustments made.
I see. Well, thank you for that.
Any other comments? We'll entertain a motion.
I have a motion.
Mr. Lewis.
I'd like to make a motion that the board finds that there's competent substantial evidence that's been presented for the major site plan, GG site plan number 2212000028, that satisfies the review criteria. Move approval of the item subject to the 4 conditions proposed by staff.
Second.
Whoops, 3 of us seconded. I guess there's no vote.
I think you've got your votes.
I'm going to give that to Mr. Kloskowitz.
Mr. Clausewitz, you won that race. We have a motion and a second. Would you please call the roll?
Derek Lewis.
Yes.
Richard Kloskowitz.
Yes.
Paul Fisher.
Yes.
Tundra King.
Yes.
Joan Kovac. Darlene Smith.
Yes.
Carla Coleman.
Yes. Good luck.
We'll take your comment back to the architect and appreciate all of your feedback. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for making that dog and Todd Park.
Staff.
Okay. We are down to audience to be heard. Is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like to address the board? Okay. Approval of the 2024 board dates and deadlines calendar. You all received a copy of that with at least one set of your agendas we got sent this month. And we have another copy provided here tonight. You had a chance to look over it? Any comments on this? I think that we need a motion to approve meeting dates for 2024.
I make a motion, Madam Chair, that we approve the meeting dates for 2024.
Is there a second?
Noted.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Would you please call the roll? Oh, any discussion? None? You can call the roll.
Tundra King.
Yes.
Joan Kovac. Paul Fisher.
Yes.
Richard Kloskowitz.
Yes.
Derek Lewis.
Yes.
Darlene Smith.
Yes.
Carla Coleman.
Yes. And we're going to make Fred promise he'll be here for all the meetings next year.
You can make that a condition.
Reports by staff. No reports. Board member discussion. We'll start at this end. Mr. Lewis?
None tonight, thank you.
Smith?
I'm excited to see the drones back in Pompano Beach and looking forward to an improved show this year. And I know the city's working hard. The city's working hard to make it right. So thank you, city. Thank you, city.
Ms. King?
I don't know if you heard at the meeting last night, they kind of went back and forth for some time about what is a hotel and Council's laughing at me. I'm still confused, so maybe we'll have that worked out by the next commission meeting. I think they gave them a month or so to come back with the verbiage. I was totally confused by the time the meeting was over, but I think they've asked staff to research that.
That was a publicly initiated amendment. They voted on it, and we're done with that. So unless somebody else decides we need to make motel and hotel definitions, even if we put definitions in, we can't discriminate one against the other. There's still a visitor accommodation, so writing these definitions won't change anything. So anyway, we're going to leave that alone, just see what happens.
I just know they discussed it for almost 30 minutes last night, and I don't know if it was it ever finalized? Council, I'm not sure, but.
I was not present, however, I was watching, and I was thoroughly confused as to, not as to the conclusion. The conclusion, I believe, came down to, and we have to talk with staff about some of this, as to where the commission was going and what they're expecting, but clearly the applicant was denied after that particular commission meeting. But it's an issue, as staff has mentioned, that it was publicly initiated, text amendment. It was something that clearly came from someone who was attempting to work around, and unfortunately, as far as the ZBA is concerned, that particular matter had been denied and he did not appeal it. So from that perspective, that particular applicant has no recourse. It's to be seen at this point whether or not the text amendment, which which is a different matter, something else arises from that, so it's to be seen. Stay tuned.
Ms. Kovac.
I have nothing tonight.
Mr. Fisher, thank you for joining us this evening.
It's a pleasure sitting up here with you all. So it's better up here than back there in the corner.
Before I recognize Mr. Clausewitz, because I know what he's going to do, I want to ask, do you have any words of wisdom for us?
Oh, you put me on the spot. No, just happy to be here.
Wanted to give you the opportunity.
Thank you.
Mr. Clausewitz, do you have anything for the good of the order?
Are you ready for me, madam?
I am ready for you.
Madam Chairman, on behalf of the staff and all the members of the board, I move we adjourn.
We are adjourned.